So we're introducing Miss Gabrielle Czaja. She is a senior Alexander Technique teacher, physical therapist, and holistic educator. She's passionate about guiding young people to thrive and succeed, building the foundation for maturing into happy, healthy, and successful adults. For 33 years, Ms. Gabrielle has helped children strengthen developmental foundations for movement and learning, and adults and children heal from complex injuries and stress-related conditions. A graduate of Bucknell University, Hahnemann University, and the Alexander Foundation, she is licensed to practice in DC, Maryland, and Virginia, and is certified Alexander education teacher. Ms. Gabrielle is known as a dynamic presenter, which is good news for us, of group workshops and educational and health professionals, students, parents, and in her private practice in Washington, D.C. Ms. Gabrielle's clients appreciate her deep knowing that little victories along the way are a cause for celebration and a way to measure success. So without further ado, I present to you Ms. Czaja.
Thank you very much, Yvette, and thank you to you, Yvette, and also to Beth for bringing me here this evening. I'm really happy to be with everyone. Wonderful. Well, thank you again, Yvette. I am really excited that all of you are here this evening, and I appreciate it's probably been a long day. And hopefully what we do tonight will be both relaxing and maybe even a little bit of energy gaining. So what I'm going to do first is share my screen. I'm going to pull up some slides here. And let's see, do you see what I see? Oh, shit.
Not yet.
Okay.
But we did hear you.
Uh-oh.
Do I need to, let me check and see some. Okay, you should be able to share.
Okay, let's see, share screen. Here we go. There we go. Okay. So tonight we are going to summon our strength, and we're going to talk about stress, and we're going to learn a little bit about self-care. So first, I would like to go over our plan for this evening. Yvette, thank you so much for that welcome. And in a moment, we're going to introduce ourselves a little bit. Then we're going to do a very gentle movement activity that you can do sitting or standing, and it's based upon the Brain Gym educational system. We're going to talk about self-care and how self-care also means caring for our kids. We're going to learn just a little bit about how stress is a full body response. I'm then going to show you a very interesting, hopefully, breathing video called The Art of Breathing. It's just a few minutes long. Then we're going to do some what we call body mapping. We're just going to explore in our own bodies and with our own movement just where the breathing system is in our body. I'm going to teach you the ready list. Then we're going to have a little bit of quiet time, which we call active rest. And then we're going to talk about application. How do we bring some of these concepts into real life, and how can we go forward? So I am going to turn off the share. Let's see. Okay. So to enliven our senses, what I thought we would do is to first awaken our ability to sense what's happening in the world. So I'd like you right now to think about your most favorite food. And when you think about your most favorite food, think first about how it smells. The aroma, the fragrance, maybe even where you're eating this favorite food. Are you having ice cream on the porch? Are you sticking your nose over a pot of soup. Just put yourself in that moment of your favorite food, looking at it, all of the colors. What does it smell like? What does it taste like? And just see if you can just bring that into your whole being, the taste of your favorite food, the fragrance. Imagine yourself where you're eating it. So now if you would like to share that, I just like to have everybody get to know each other a little bit. And because everybody's screen probably looks a little bit different. Is it okay with all of you if I ask each of you by name to share your favorite food? And if you would say your name and then just tell us what your favorite food is. How does that sound? Yeah? Okay. So Yvette, would you like to go first? Introduce yourself and what your favorite food is.
Sure. My name is Yvette, and this was a bit of a challenge because I felt the need to pick between two, but I'll go with the most sensory one, which is chocolate chip cookies.
Wonderful. Thank you. Adela?
You won't be able to hear her because she's in the interpretation phase.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
She
Beth?
can put it in the chat. I guess I'd say curry.
Wonderful. Andrea or Montserrat, who'd like to go next?
I will say brown stewed chicken.
Yum. Right.
And my favorite is fresh strawberries.
It's almost strawberry season. Wonderful. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. So whenever I meet with people online, I like to do a little bit of movement, connecting our brain and our body just to make it easier to learn in this manner on this one-dimensional screen. What I'm going to demonstrate to you right now is called PACE, and it's, again, part of the brain gym paradigm. I'm going to stand up and demonstrate. If you would be comfortable standing up, great. If not, you can certainly do this sitting down. So does everyone have some water nearby? And if you have some water nearby and you can stand up, great. If not, you can have a seat. And the first of the four things that we're going to do is just have a sip of water. Water energizes ourselves. Wonderful. Now, the next thing we're going to do is called a cross crawl. And what a cross crawl looks like is bringing one hand to your opposite knee. And if you're sitting, you can just tap your hand to your opposite knee. So we're connecting up left and right body with the left and right parts of our brain. Getting ready to learn. And we can stop with that. Now what I'd like you to do is just feel your feet on the floor and be aware of everything that's behind you. Be aware of what's above your head. And ask yourself, am I seeing? Am I breathing? Can I be soft and tall? Which means, can I be upright without getting stiff? And I can be relaxed and at ease, but without going down here. So can I be soft and tall? So now we're going to do something called brain buttons. We're going to put our hand right below our navel and then bring your hand up underneath your collarbones and give yourself a good massage. So all of these activities are designed to help us be energized and ready to learn and focus, but also at the same time be relaxed. Let the breath out, maybe switch hands. And then let that go. Now, again, just stop for a moment and ask yourself, am I seeing? Am I breathing? Can I be soft and tall? Now, the last thing we're going to do is a hookup. So we bring our arms out in front of each other. And you're going to cross your wrists and interlace your fingers. Now bring your hands towards your belly button and then up towards your heart. Now, whether you're sitting or standing, can you cross your ankles? This is called a hookup. Now, this arm stuff is a little bit complicated. So let's do this again. I'm going to uncross. I'm going to uncross. So arms out in front. It's almost like twister. Cross your wrists. So the palms are facing each other. Interlace your fingers. Now bring your hands towards your belly button and then up towards your heart. Beautiful. Now cross your ankles. So this is called a hookup. It's a wonderful thing to do if you're feeling stressed, if you're feeling tired, you've had a long day. It's a great thing to do before or after you get onto a Zoom meeting. But just notice how it brings a moment of calm to your system. And then uncross your legs, uncross your hands, and just bring your fingertips together. So this is what we call PACE, positive, active. We've cleared out the fog, so we have some energy. In the resource list that accompanies this workshop, there is a handout with a diagram of how to do all of these things. So be sure to get that handout. Okay, I am going to share my screen again. And now we're going to talk about why self-care is important. I know that everyone hears this so often, all of the time, and let's see if we can make it a little bit simple tonight. So first, I'd like to find out, what are your struggles? What are the kinds of things that you struggle with? And you can put it in the chat, or please feel free to unmute. You're welcome to ask questions at any time. So what are the things that make it difficult for you to stay healthy? What are the things that challenge you in your day? And Yvette, may I rely on you to tell us what's happening in the chat?
Most definitely.
Thank you.
That says poor sleep hygiene, and I second that.
That is a tough one, especially because we know sleep is so important. And then when we don't get it, we get a little bit even more stressed because we know it's important and we're not getting it, right? Anyone else? Anything else?
Montserrat said being rushed and anxious.
Well, we're going to try to help with some of that stuff tonight. Thank you for sharing, Beth and Montserrat. Anything else in there?
Yeah. Would anybody
Okay.
share?
So we all know how difficult self-care is. And what I'm hoping we can also keep in mind is that when we can take even just 30 seconds in a day to care for ourselves, we're caring for our kids. When we can self-regulate, we're helping our kids self-regulate. I think we all appreciate that our health is just a remarkable gift. And it's also our most powerful ally as parents. And as parents and educators of neurodiverse kids, it's even more challenging. I don't think that there is any other more challenging activity that an adult can do, which is to educate and parent neurodiverse kids. So when we can take just a few minutes to put on our own life vest first, you've all heard this, tried, but true, then we can begin to take care of our kids. And what I'm hoping that you will come away with tonight is just some very easy, quick, simple things. And we've already done one of them to just help you come into yourself. Intention is everything. And a little bit goes a long way. Even adults have meltdowns. So when our kids are melting down, how do we not melt down? How do we stay calm and confident and collected and connected to ourselves when we're not feeling rested, when our kids are really struggling, when we're struggling? How do we balance everything? So I think about the fact that success is simply in our intention, because we're not going to succeed. I don't think that the idea of life, work, parenting, self-balance is really a balance. It's an up and down thing. I mean, it's going like this constantly, right? So a little bit goes a long way. So stress, we often think about as stress being just up here in our head, in our mind, but it's in our body. And what you're seeing is a very simplified diagram of three very important components of what we call the stress axis. And the stress axis includes our hypothalamus and our pituitary, which are in our brain, and the adrenal glands, which sit right on top of your kidneys. And the nerve, that's a large nerve that you're seeing traveling from the brain down into the center of your body, is called the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is a very important part of our nervous system. We're not going to talk about that tonight, but we refer to these three glands as the HPA axis. When life gets stressed, when we're not rested, when we are rushing around, when there's an emergency, when there's a crisis, what happens is the brain says, okay, I need energy. I need hormones. So the hypothalamus is going to talk to the pituitary, send hormones down to the pituitary. The pituitary is going to get engaged, get into action. The pituitary is going to then turn on the adrenals. So there's a very rapid sequence of events. And again, I'm really simplifying this for this evening, that happens to give us energy, to get that rush of hormones, that rush of adrenaline, so we can deal with whatever it is we have to deal with. Now, in the case of a very short, quick and dirty stressor, like you have to slam on the brakes in the car, it's a one-off, it happens in 10 seconds, and then it goes away. In general, that kind of stressor, after it's over and our heart rate starts to drop and our blood pressure starts to drop and our breathing starts to ease out, this whole system, this whole stress system begins to regulate itself. Under long-term stress, this system, when it's on constantly, then gets overused and it gets tired and it gets worn out. And then it makes it even more difficult for us to respond. And I think that it's fair to say that everyone's been dealing with this in the last 3 years. We've been in a state of chronic nervous system overutilization. We're in a state of being constantly triggered. And adding that, in addition to just the regular activities of daily life, of being parents and educators, puts this system in an exhausted place. So if we can remember that stress is a whole body activity, then we can use our whole body to manage stress. So breathing. I'm going to talk a little bit here about breathing, and then I'm going to show you, it's about a 7 or 8 minute video of how the breathing system works. Before I go on, does anyone have any questions so far? And please always feel free to speak up or drop something into the chat. Okay. So right now, what I'd like you to do is just notice that you're breathing. Just take a moment. You don't have to do anything with it. You don't have to take a big out breath. You don't have to do a big in breath. Just notice that you're breathing. You may not even notice that you're breathing because we're all just sitting quietly, and that doesn't matter. We're going to talk about how the out breath is actually more important than the in breath. And that when we allow the breath to leave, when the breath releases, that's how we create space for the fresh, new breath, all that new oxygen to come rushing right back into our lungs. So I'm going to stop this share and then pull up the video. Now there's, just to let all of you know, there's no sound to this, and it is about 8 minutes.
Are we supposed to be seeing the video yet? Miss Gabrielle,
Yes.
are we supposed to be seeing the video yet?
Oh, you're not seeing it? Oh dear. I'm so sorry. I thought you were seeing it. Okay, let's try this again. Okay, here we go. Got it?
Yes.
Okay, I'm so sorry about that. I'd love to hear any feedback, discoveries, anything new. Don't all speak at once.
I'm not sure if I'm getting it right. I think what I got out of it is how your breathing may affect your entire body, from the bones to the muscles to the tissues and everything else, and how it gets built and rebuilt from it. But I'm not sure I'm interpreting it right.
I don't think I could have said it any better. Thank you so much for explaining that, Montserrat. That's absolutely true. Absolutely true. As somebody that teaches breathing, there's a lot of misinformation out there about breathing, which is why I think the video just speaks so much to the fact that breathing is a whole body activity. Yeah. Yeah. Any other observations or questions? So because stress is a whole body activity and breathing is a whole body activity, when we use our whole self, our thinking, our moving, our sensing self, when we engage the totality of who each of us is, that's the best way I can think of, and what I've been taught to navigate stress. So the question then becomes, how can we minimize the long-term impact of the stressors that all of you have in your lives and reserve a little bit of time for ourselves as we go through the day to both minimize the impact of stress, but also give us some energy? Because we know that if we can just take a few moments of ourselves for ourselves, we're helping out our kids, and that is indirect. But I don't think that we need to go to the gym and work out for half an hour or soak in the tub for half an hour, even though we don't like to do that, to take a moment and to just bring our breathing back into focus, allow our bodies to settle down, and then move on to the next thing. We cannot be perfect. We shouldn't be perfect. We don't have that much time in the day. So now what we're going to talk about is, first, we're going to map on ourselves what we were seeing on that video. So I'm going to stand up, and if you'd like to stand up, great. You don't have to. But first on ourselves, if you could put your fingers right underneath your collarbones. Now hop over your collarbones and go into that little hollow in there. That's where the tips of your lungs are on you. They're really high up there. Now, if you come also now underneath your collarbone and then come all the way out to the front of your shoulder, and then maybe even put your hand underneath your arm. I'm a PT, I'm used to doing these things. I'm going to stick my hand as far up as I can, up in my underarm. You might feel your ribs in there, but your lungs are all the way very high up in here. We also know that they're this high up in our back. It's hard to get our arms back there. So our lungs are pretty much here and here. Now go ahead and put your hands on the side of your body. And I'll step back. And if you come to the front, can you feel a little bit of a divot where it's kind of soft? But then you might also feel the lower edge of your rib cage. And even if you don't feel it, it doesn't matter. You can just kind of be in the same area and just follow around halfway between your chest and your belly button where your ribs are. And see if you can feel that outer boundary. So as you saw in the video, the diaphragm The respiratory diaphragm attaches to the lower border of our ribs. And then underneath our ribs, we've got our belly. And then all the way down to our pelvis. So really, this is our whole breathing container. So just take a moment and go ahead and put one hand on your belly and the other hand on your chest. And just take a moment. This is your whole breathing container. We've got our lungs inside. That diaphragm, as you could tell in the video, is this thin, supple muscle, very strong, always moving. So there's a lot of information we hear about diaphragmatic breathing or belly breathing, and I'd like to address that for a moment. When people say diaphragmatic breathing, I'm a little confused because all breathing uses the diaphragm. As you could see in the video, right? The diaphragm is the primary muscle of breathing. And all of the other muscles, the muscles in between our ribs, our abdominal muscles, the muscles of our back, those are all muscles that participate in breathing. But the respiratory diaphragm is the primary muscle of breathing. So all breathing includes our diaphragm. Another misconception that exists is the idea of belly breathing. And as you might recall from the video, there is more movement of our abdominal region than there is in our chest. And that's simply because there's bones there. So even though there's muscles in between the bones and the diaphragm is moving the ribs, it's only because there's bones here and there's no bones here that we get the belly poofing out. And if you would all put your fingers together like this. So think about what your hands are doing as the diaphragm, and your arms are the ribs. So here's an in-breath, the ribs spread out and the diaphragm drops down. Here's an out-breath. The diaphragm goes up, the ribs drop down. So our hands are the diaphragm. There's the in-breath. There's the out-breath. In-breath, out-breath. So part of the reason all of the viscera move is because the diaphragm descends down. So when we're getting a nice, complete, full breath with the movement of the respiratory diaphragm, it's giving a wonderful massage to all of our viscera, all of our organs. And that's why the belly poofs out. If we spend too much time doing this, we're actually not breathing completely. We're not breathing fully. So that's why paying attention to the out breath and using our whole body as our breathing container actually helps us develop and train and strengthen our breathing coordination. So with that in mind, I'm going to, well, first of all, any questions about this? Any observations?
So does that also have anything to do with the rhythm of the breath? Like,
Yes.
does it make a difference? Like when you're breathing, like when you're short of breath because you're rushed or whatever, and when you're calm, and how it expands more or less based on
Yes.
that? Does that affect that or not? Like
Yes.
the quality
No,
of the breath, so to speak.
Sure. No, that's exactly what happens. You know, if you think about in a crisis, when we're rushing, we have to move more quickly. We have to think more quickly. So the body needs more oxygen. the brain needs more oxygen. So the diaphragm is going to work really hard to make sure we're getting a lot of oxygen to our brain, to our organs, to our muscles, so we can move quickly. And so what happens is that if we're not breathing completely when we're at rest, and if we're doing too much rushing, if we're stressed very often, all the time, then we begin to develop a breathing pattern, a breathing coordination pattern that doesn't take an easy, deep, full, complete breath. And that then we start doing a lot of shallow breathing. And so, yes, we have to breathe hard when we're rushing around. There's nothing wrong with that. Because that's what the body needs and that's what the brain needs. But we want to be able to have our breath be full and complete when we're at rest. And really what we want is for the respiratory system to be resilient and responsive, because that's what we all need. That's what each of you needs: resiliency and the ability to be able to respond rather than react. And if our stress management system in our body, if our breathing coordination in our body is available to us and is well coordinated, then when we do get stressed, because it happens when we are rushing around, when we aren't getting enough sleep, our whole breathing coordination system is there to take care of us. And it's the breathing system that really is at the heart of self-regulation. And that's true of adults, just in the same way it's true for kids. I mean, research many years ago, I think it was in the 70s, discovered that simply noticing the breath, we don't have to do anything with it, automatically drops our heart rate and our blood pressure. Just noticing it. I mean, the easiest thing any of us can do all day long is to take 30 seconds or even just notice 3 breaths, the breath leaving and returning, and then it leaves and then returns. And in a moment, we're going to work a little bit more specifically with our breath in a really gentle activity. So I have a question for all of you. Would you like to do a little bit of movement, or would you like to have a little rest and either sit quietly in your chair or lie down on the floor? What would everyone like to do? I see some very big smiles. This is your time. Please share what would feel best to you. Okay. Got it? Okay. Does anyone have the space or the desire to get onto the floor at all? No. Okay, that's fine. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how you can, this is called active rest. And I'm going to walk you through this, but first I'm going to show you what I would encourage you to do at home, which is lying on your back with your head on books. And then you lie there for 5 to 20 minutes. Now, tonight, we're not going to take 20 minutes. But active rest is something that helps to regulate the breathing system. I am going to show you the floor exercise in a moment. It helps to regulate the breathing system. It helps to actually activate our postural mechanism so that when we get up from the floor, we actually are more supported and stronger in our body. So I'm going to demonstrate what you can all do at home, either before you go to sleep tonight or sometime in the next couple of days. But then I'm going to come back and I'm just going to talk all of you through this as you're sitting there. So you're going to get a paperback book. And you're going to lie on your back with your head on this book and your knees bent and your feet flat. So we call this active rest. And the book under your head, you want to have enough book under your head so that you're not like this. But then you don't want to have so much under your head that your chin is digging into your chest. And it's just trial and error to find out what that is. So for even 5 minutes, just lying on the floor like this helps your whole stress mechanism begin to regulate itself. This helps your breathing regulate. And it also, as we'll discover after we do this, help to activate your postural mechanism. So I'm going to walk you through what I would walk anyone through, active rest, as if you were lying on your back. So you can keep your eyes open or you can close your eyes. If you're driving, please don't close your eyes. So just take a moment and feel your feet on the floor. And be aware of the space above your head, the ceiling, the roof. Be aware of everything that's behind you. Everything to the left of your body. Everything to the right of your body. So just take a moment to notice the ground underneath your feet, the space above your head, everything behind you, whatever is in the room to the left of you, whatever is in the room to the right of you. Notice the surface you're sitting on. Is it firm? Is it soft? And just take a moment. At any time of the day, we can just take a moment and notice that breath is happening. It's easy to notice that we're breathing when we're rushing, when we're walking quickly, going up the steps, going down the steps, getting out of breath. It is not as easy, but over time we can train ourselves to notice our breathing even when we're quiet and still. So if you're able to notice that there's breath coming in and breath leaving, just observe where in your body it's really obvious. Is it your belly? Is it your chest? Is it your shoulders? Maybe it's the sides of your body. It doesn't matter. Just observe for yourself where it's really easy to notice that breath is happening. Now shift your awareness to your nostrils, to your nose. And it's pretty extraordinary. All the air we need comes in through our nose. When we need more of it, that's when we start breathing out of our mouth. But just sitting quietly here right now, just see if you can catch a little glimmer of the movement of the breath at your nose. You might not, but just knowing that the breath is leaving and returning and leaving and returning at your nose. The air comes in. It comes in almost as high as the top of your spine, into your airway, into your lungs, and that's happening because of the ongoing movement of your diaphragm. When we're sleeping, thank goodness, we don't have to think about breathing. When we're awake, if we simply pay a little bit of attention to our breath, a little bit of attention to the ongoing movement of the diaphragm, our heart rate drops, our blood pressure drops, and our breathing evens out. And this is the key to navigating stressful situations. When we can take a moment and use our whole body, our thinking, moving, sensing, feeling self, to allow for an easier movement of the breath, we're interrupting that whole cascade of stress hormones that show up when we need them, but we don't want them hanging around all the time. So we want to be able to be in control of how and when our body responds. So your mind might have wandered, that doesn't matter, happens all the time. Just now return to the ongoing movement of your breath. And now direct your attention to way high up underneath your arms. Where the arms connect to the upper back is where the lungs are, all the way up under there. You know, our armpits don't get much love. We only pay attention to them in the shower when they're stinky, but our lungs and our ribs are all the way up there. So just see if you can direct your attention to all the way up underneath your arms and see if you can just catch a glimmer of the movement of your breath where your arms connect to your back. Yawning is good. That means your body's starting to shift down, which is a good thing to do in the evening. Some of you may have many miles to go yet after our time together. So just observe for yourself where it's really easy to sense the ongoing movement of breath. Now let's just expand our awareness of our whole body and just notice your feet on the ground. You might be in some kind of shoes or socks. Just feel the solid ground underneath your feet. Feel the support of the chair, the bottom of the chair seat, the back of the chair. Be aware of the space above your head. Now, could you imagine your head floating up away from your shoulders? What we say to the 5-year-olds is let your head go up like a floaty balloon. And then I have them pick their favorite color balloon. So just invite or allow your head to float up away from your shoulders. And let your shoulders soften a little bit. Now your pelvis is what's sitting on the chair. And we might call your pelvis kind of the bottom part or the feet of your spine. And the top of your spine is all the way up behind your nose. So just acknowledge the whole length of your body. So as you acknowledge your head floating up and the whole length of the front of your body, the whole length of the back of your body, and notice your arms and your legs and your feet and your hands. Now come back, if you will, to noticing that you're breathing. You don't have to do anything. Notice that you're breathing. It might be different from before. It might not be. That doesn't matter. Our bodies are just like who we are as people and who kids are. When we give them a little bit of love and attention, everything goes a little bit more smoothly. So just take a moment now and let your eyes open if they're closed. And just let your eyes open only to the extent that the room is coming to you. So you don't have to wide open your eyes. You can just let your eyes gently open just enough to let the light of the room, the colors, the shapes, the surroundings bring you back. Coming back into this space where we are together. Welcome back. So we did an upright version of what we call active rest. And this is something that I invite you to do for yourself. This is also something you could encourage kids to do. It's a little bit better than a nap in many ways because we are awake and yet we're at rest. Being on the floor, and kids don't really need books underneath their heads, but being on the floor where it's firm, you want to have something soft and cushy underneath you, not just a hard wooden floor or a very thin rug. But when we're on a firm surface for 5 to 20 minutes, it gives our whole body, which is our whole breathing container, a chance to expand in all directions. And when we have more space, and I probably don't even have to say this to all of you, but when we have more physical space, we have more mental space. We have more, as we like to say, more bandwidth, right? And we all need a little bit more emotional and physical bandwidth. So even 5 minutes will make a difference. Yvette, you have a question?
Yes. Do you get the same or less benefit if you feel the urge to move a lot? Like for me, partially because I'm tired, I felt a lot of urge to move and shift.
Mm-hmm. Sitting is not an easy activity. And I wonder what would happen if you were on your back. Part of the reason we feel that urge to move and shift is actually a very normal impulse on the part of the body. it's really hard for any of us to sit still. Sitting is a whole nother workshop. It's a very complex activity. Nobody feels good for sitting for very long, whether you're at the dinner table for too long, whether you're in the car for too long, whether you're in a meeting for too long. So it's fine that you want to move around. I mean, that's very healthy. Very healthy. So if you move around or you're shifting, having an awareness of that moving around and you're shifting, and you could even experiment with what's my breath doing in response to the moving around and shifting. So that's body awareness, Yvette, and that's all you need. It's a little bit of that. Because anytime we take a moment for ourselves, we're shifting down out of a state of fight or flight or freeze into a state of rest and digest. And I think the challenge is, how do we shift from the frenzy of the day, and even in 30 seconds, can we take a moment for ourselves? And if we simply begin to notice the breath, that's where we can find some help. So yes, Montserrat.
I'm sorry, my mic wasn't working. So this active resting resembles a lot some of the meditation exercises I do.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering if there's a difference, because I think like there's the physical component of it, and then the mental component of it, where you just kind of like become aware of the thoughts coming in, and then you let them go, and so on. So is that part of the same thing, or is there a difference? Or because like what I was focusing on on your guidance, but at the same time the thoughts kept crossing my mind because I wasn't paying attention to that. So I wonder if if this active resting is something separate from the mental resting, so to speak.
So it is the same, and there are a lot of parallels. It's a great question between meditation, which is becoming aware of what's happening with ourselves, and active rest. And active rest, and what we're going to talk about next, the ready list, is based on the principles of the Alexander technique. And the Alexander technique is a mind-body learning system that teaches us how to use our body and our postural awareness to think more clearly, to breathe more freely, to be more in the present moment. So it's normal whenever we quiet ourselves for our brain to get busy. And meditation, of course, is not worrying about the fact that our brain's getting busy. It's just noticing that our brain is getting busy and then saying, oh, okay, I could now notice my breath. What distinguishes active rest from meditation is that when we're lying on our back, we're getting an expansion of our skeleton, our muscles are releasing, and with our head on a book and on this more firm but comfortable surface, we're actually beginning to awaken and enliven our ability to be upright. And our ability to be upright and strong and balanced on our feet is really the source of how we move through our day, literally and figuratively, with a little bit more ease and power and strength. So this idea of lying on our back on a firm surface actually begins to stimulate our body's internal support system. But there are parallels to this. And so that's actually kind of a nice segue into the ready list. And the ready list is a way of accessing this postural support system. It's a way of increasing our breathing and improving our breathing coordination at any given moment. It's very quick and simple. So what I'm going to do is share my screen again and find our slides. Can you all see my screen? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay, so the ready list is a mind-body strategy for the present moment. It helps us become ready for any activity or a new experience. Over time, it can help us be more responsive rather than reactive to something that's happening in our world. And that it can also help us recover and restore our equanimity. I think we all probably would agree that life is more about resiliency and recovery than it is about maybe being prepared. But the ready list is a way to prepare ourselves. It helps release physical tension. It quiets the mind. It can help support focus. And again, as we were just talking about, it activates our postural support mechanism. So this is what the ready list sort of looks like. And there is a handout for this in your resource packet. So we did this a little bit at the beginning. So I'm going to walk all of us through this right now. What I'd like you to do is just wherever you are in your chair, your room, is just stop and ask yourself, am I seeing? Look around your room, see your surroundings, have panoramic vision. Maybe you're seeing something that you see every day, but maybe see it a little bit differently right now, looking out the windows. Am I breathing? And notice that as soon as you stop and even ask yourself, am I seeing? Your breath might shift. And then ask yourself, am I breathing? Can I be soft and tall? So can I be upright without being stiff and straightening and holding ourselves up? That doesn't feel good. Without collapsing and going into this place that feels cozy and comfortable, but over time is not going to feel so good. Am I seeing? Am I breathing? Can I be soft and tall? Upright, but not tense. Relaxed and not collapsed. Now, if we're going to teach this to kids, this is what we do for the little ones. And this too, a handout, you can print this out, put it on your fridge, print these out, put a picture on your phone, carry it with you, but stop like a lizard. See like an owl. Breathe like a fish. And be soft and tall like a giraffe. So I'm going to stop the share. So right now, as you're sitting, what I'd all like you to do is sit up straight. Have perfect posture, whatever that means to you. Just hold your head up, sit up straight, straighten your spine. Stick your chest out. Now, has anything happened with your breathing? Now let go of that. Any observations? Did anybody's breath change when you stood up super straight and stiff?
Breathing
Now,
is faster.
go ahead.
I was going to say it's more shallow when it's stiff.
More shallow. Anyone else?
Faster, maybe?
It was faster. Yep. That more shallow breathing. Okay, now go for it. Go into really soft. Yes. Hello. You can have them go along with us, Andrea. Why not? Bring them in. So now notice your breathing here. What's your breathing like here? Okay, because we have a visitor, now we're going to do the ready list for kids. We're going to
Feels
stop.
heavier.
We're going to stop like a lizard. And can we see like an owl? Can we breathe like a goldfish? And can we be soft and tall like a giraffe? So now how's everybody doing? Is this any different? So this is a really common habit, but you can tell that it mushes our organs, so they're not going to function very well. And that's another, then we're sort of told to stand up straight and correct. This doesn't feel good. I don't know about you guys, but this does not feel good. So the middle ground is soft and tall like a giraffe. How do we just think about our head floating up like a balloon? Let your feet be on the floor and think about all of you expanding in between. So using the ready list as often as you like during the day is a way to come back to yourself. It's a way to begin to regulate your breathing. It's a way to activate your body's support. And so when we're using our whole body in this way, it makes it easier to deal with the stressors, deal with the lack of sleep, deal with the having to rush around, deal with tired and hungry little people in our lives. And it doesn't take that much time because it's all in your, it's just, you can do this sitting at a stoplight. And we like to think about using the ready list at what we call transitions. So I'm going to share my screen again. Okay. So here are some possible times to use the ready list. We could do it at a mealtime. Whether you're by yourself, whether you're with everyone, we're hungry, we want to sit down, but what if just for 10 seconds we stop? Am I seeing? Am I breathing? Can I be soft and tall? Before and after getting onto a Zoom meeting, I think most of us tend to have the mute button on and the video off. So before we click on the video or before we enter the meeting on the computer, we can use the ready list. And then our minds get engrossed in our meeting and our work, and that's all very fine. But then when you click out of the meeting to go to the next meeting or to go up and do the next activity, that's another time you could do the ready list. I think IEP meetings and meetings with teachers and health professionals are really, they can be pretty intense. There's a lot at stake and there's a lot going on in our hearts and our heads. But even in the midst of that meeting, you can just take a moment. You can even ask for a moment. And no one knows you're doing it, but if you just stop and look around the meeting room, ask yourself, am I breathing? And then just invite yourself to be soft and tall. So that tiny little moment, that split second, clears our head. If you're feeling confused or worried or upset, when your kids are struggling, they're worried, they're upset. If you teach this to your kids, you can have them do this before homework. What are some other ways? What are some other transitions that you can think of that are relevant to you in your life? Surely I didn't cover everything.
The commute is a real one.
Yes, the commute is a real one. Absolutely. Absolutely. There's generally enough time at a stoplight, and we have to look around anyway. But if we think soft and tall as we're sitting at a stoplight, our body's going to feel a lot better. That's going to help our brain feel a lot better. Yeah.
Miss Andres,
Yes.
before the bedtime routine.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Andrea. And you could even have everybody get on the floor for 5 minutes before they get into bed. And, you know, when we can't hear you, we'd love to hear you, Andrea.
No, I said, I think I'm gonna try tonight because right now she's backflipping, somersaulting, going on the couch because mommy's at a meeting and then she's at another meeting. So yeah, I'm gonna try it out tonight.
Right. You too, Montserrat? Yeah. 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 And, you know, kids love getting in touch with their bodies. So if you have them lie on the floor for 5 minutes and you ask them to see and breathe, and even just asking them to notice their breathing, don't tell them, but they're going to calm down. And that's going to help them shift from daytime right into sleep time. I mean, it's not perfect, but this is the really wonderful thing. We are all capable of learning, and the brain and the body learn also directly and indirectly. And the more that we do this, then the more responsive our breathing, our brain, our body becomes. So if you start practicing this every night for 5 minutes, 2 weeks from now, your body's going to respond that much more quickly. 2 weeks from now, you might find yourself standing a little bit taller, not standing like this so much. Because every time we interrupt that stress cycle, every time we give our body a tiny little bit of instruction, our body listens to us. Our body responds. And you've probably have heard, I mean, we all know about brain plasticity. We all know that we're capable of learning, and the body is involved in learning. So I think bedtime is a great time. Any questions so far? I'm seeing our time, so I'm going to come back to sharing my screen. So we already were talking a little bit about real life. So we can use the ready list whenever you can think of it. The Brain Gym handout, and I'm just going to do that very quickly. Drink a little bit of water. And there's a very explicit handout in your resource packet. You're going to do the cross crawl. You're going to do the brain buttons. And then the hookup. If you take only one thing away from tonight, the one thing that will make a real difference is to just observe your breath. If you just observe your breath, it's going to start to regulate. You don't ever have to go And you don't have to go. Just notice that breathing is happening. Notice your tummy moving, notice your chest moving, maybe even direct your attention to your nose. Just notice that breath is happening. That alone is going to take you so far, and you don't need to carve out any time for that. Our breath is with us all day long. You know, I had an adult student many years ago. She was very busy television executive. And she said, Gabrielle, the only time I can think about this is when I go into the bathroom. And I was like, great. You know, sometimes that's the only time you have to yourself, right? So when you're washing your hands, that's another time to notice that you're breathing. Now, I've put on here active rest. If you can aim for 3 times a week, great. But if it's 5 minutes once a week, it's a great start. So that's something that you can definitely do. So just to kind of wrap up here, I just want to thank all of you so very much for coming. And again, Beth and Yvette, for your kind invitation of having me. Please reach out. My contact information is on the page. I'd love to hear from you. If you have any questions about anything that we talked about tonight, I am willing and available